What's up, Digilogue fam? It's your boy Drew. We are episode 19 of the L's, aka Lessons Learned. 19 episodes for 2020. Obviously, it's been a surreal year, so just want to thank everyone that's been supporting these L's episodes and all the amazing guests that we've had so far. Super excited today because we have another incredible dope guest. Um, he's not only the co-founder and CEO of Indify, but he's also an incredible artist. I want to introduce you to the Digilogue community, Shav Garg. What's up, Shav?
What's up, man? How you doing?
Good, good. We always like to, before we even start episodes and like content like this, like I said, this is just a conversation between two music lovers and two music enthusiasts. How's the family? How's everyone during this quarantine? How have you kind of just adjusted? Like very music, a lot of creatives in general have always kind of gone through ups and downs, but love to hear some background about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think fortunately on a personal level, myself and my friends and family are for the most part healthy. Everybody's doing well, so that's something
Mhm.
for us to be grateful for, and safe. So that's huge. But I moved to Williamsburg recently, and
Nice.
I'm near a studio here with my friends that I'll go to, in a
Hmm.
very isolated way. I'm going to the park here every once in a while, so it's been an interesting energy in New York. I think people are down on New York right now, but I think there is a little bit of magic and hope in the air here, and I'm ready for it, man. I'm ready for rebuilding.
I love that. I think it's important. I think, this year has been a growth period for everybody. We've all grown in our own respective ways. To your point, and congratulations on the move. I'm renovating my place. So for those that are watching or wondering why I have green and gray walls, it's because I'm renovating my place. Don't judge my color schemes. I did. I'm literally renovating my spot right now. Um, and but more importantly, it's dope to like connect with you. So for context, uh, Connor, who's one of your co-founders, we initially reached out to him to have him on our Digilogue Day conference back in March, early March, but obviously because of COVID, we had to readjust. But and then most recently, he reached out and connected, and I think for me, like I've always been a fan of what you guys have been doing on the Indify side, but we'll go into that in a moment. But it's dope that we're now kind of circling back and kind of just connecting, virtually, hopefully in person soon.
Yeah, no,
Um, but before we start, I always love to learn about, um, a person's upbringing, like where they started, because I think for the audience, they may know you as the CEO and co-founder of Indify, but they don't also know that you as the artist as well. So I think it's important to maybe talk a little bit about your upbringing, like who are some of your early influences, like
yeah.
what was that first project that really got you hooked into music? Was there like someone in the household that played music, or I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, for myself, I was actually born in New Delhi, India, and then I moved to Mumbai. I moved to Singapore. I moved to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, Penang, Malaysia, all before I was like 7 or 8 when I moved to the U.S. in Westchester County. And it actually wasn't too much later than that I met one of my co-founders, Connor, who him and I won a fourth grade Little League baseball championship. So not a huge deal, but kind of a big deal.
Hey,
We've been doing this for
you
a
gotta
long
add
time.
that.
Yeah, exactly. And music wise, it's actually really interesting. Growing up to like, I think what you listen to when you're really, really young has a
Mhm.
deep and profound impact on you more than you actually realize. And
Right.
funny because up to like 10 or like 11, I mean, at that point, you're pretty much pulling from the influences of your parents. And my dad and my mom would pretty much listen to two things, which is classic rock,
Mhm.
like Bryan Adams, Eric Clapton, like the softer side of it,
Love
and
that.
Hollywood. And so that's like the I think the first roots of mine. Like I actually remember back, even though I was so young in Malaysia, like driving around listening to like certain Bollywood songs or like
Hmm.
certain songs by Bryan Adams, like especially the MTV Unplugged kind of series, that really hit me in a big way.
Yeah.
As I grew up, I started to get more introduced to, really just like pop culture, pop music at the
Hmm.
time, like a lot of really great R&B and hip hop acts. And I think like it's interesting, man. Like when you when we were in high school and like those first Drake mixtapes were coming out, that
Yeah.
was like he was like our guy, you know. And you listen to like So Far Gone, and even Thank Me Later. I think scored a lot of our like high school days with me and Connor and Matt, who are my co-founders and best friends. And we'd be driving around listening to music, but we'd also listen to music from like blogs like Good Music All Day, like Two Dope Boys. Like I remember all these different blogs in that whole era. So that was a big, hugely influential.
Yeah.
And then I think like a turning point for me musically was um, acid rap. And
Mm.
that album, you know, really scored, I think, our college years, myself, Connor, and Matt. Again, like we were best friends, like riding around, just bumping that. And in that album, it's just so hard to not know every word to every song on it. And then a couple other big moments where, like, I think it goes like for me, albums that really changed my life.
Yeah.
Uh, Take Care was
Yes.
hugely influential to me. I remember being on a flight to India and I just listened to that just on repeat, and just the whole album. Just you can listen to it a lot of times on a flight to India.
Yeah.
It's a long.
So how long is that flight? Is it like 20 hours?
If you go direct, it's something like that. I can't even remember. I think it's like 15. But I've done 18
Oh
times
wow.
in Singapore because all my family's still there. And so that I think is an
Right.
important part of my life personally. But yeah, Blonde, Blonde, Ask
Yes.
Rap, and Take Care. Those three have a special place in my heart. And Blonde, and I can talk about it in a bit, but Blonde really kind of helped fix me in a lot of ways personally, and helped open the door for me creatively in some ways too, and just in life and through Indify, just on a big personal level. Blonde helped me through a lot of things.
I love that. I mean, I love Frank. You know, I remember back in 2011 when he put out Nostalgia Ultra. I was like, this is so left of center. Like, what is this? And it just blew my mind. It was actually an interesting time between him and The Weeknd, because the
Yeah,
Weeknd had put out House of Balloons around that same year, that early that year.
that was an
Uh,
insane year. I was talking to someone about this recently.
yeah, so it's really great. And then obviously, I think from Drake's So Far Gone into like Take Care, like that was a really like that 2011 2012 period, and then like was a really great kind of like just like revolution for music, because there was a transition between more so like rappers and this kind of melodic flow. I think also from the R&B side it was very different as well. Is not your traditional R&B artist between The Weeknd and the Frank. And then also I think I remember ASAP was just like really
Yeah.
took off that year. So this is just for context for the folks that are watching. And then SoundCloud was really taking off. I remember.
Yes, I mean, this is what I'll say. I think in our generation, and like more so in the next one,
Hmm.
grow up with 50 million songs at your fingertips.
Right.
Like even when I grew up, we didn't have quite that, but we started downloading on like Hulkshare online and stuff. Like we were listening
Hmm.
to emerging artists that way. Like I remember when I
Right.
was putting tracks and putting out tracks in high school, we would look at how many like Mediafire downloads or something like we'd have.
Yes. The media fire downloads.
Yeah,
Yes.
Hulkshare downloads. Like I remember that era. These kids have 50 million songs in their pocket. They're gonna grow up different. Their perspective is wider. Their their ears are more open, truly. And so I don't think
Hmm.
we sometimes forget that. But a lot of those artists provided that landscape for me to like stuff from classic rock and Bollywood all the way to R&B and hip hop. And that I think that the true thing, the through line for me, you know, musically and through Indify, that I always leaned into when I heard and when I recognized is melody. When you have
Mm.
something that's melodic, that really
Right.
sticks out and that catches you, there's nothing that can beat a good melody, in my opinion.
Yeah. Melodies. Oof. You can hum those melodies 4 or 5, 10 years later.
Exactly.
Always classic. So you mentioned Connor. You guys met in fourth grade. You won your baseball championship. So did growing up, did you said Westchester, right? So
Yeah.
uh, what was that? Do you remember your first show that you went to? Or do you remember like
Yeah, I
how you
do.
got that show, how you got to that show.
I do. It was, and at the time we just like absolutely loved this artist, and it's funny because like it's just an artist that's not as relevant right now, but it was a Swayze show. I remember, and it was like more of a fun thing we were doing with my friends, like me, Connor,
Yeah.
Matt, and another friend of ours, Carlo, and we went, and it was like Far East Movement, Swayze, and LMFAO, and it was insane. I think it was just the energy of New York that was so crazy about it. And this is actually my first shows were probably shows that I was playing like in like local areas before I went to an actual concert. I guess I went to a concert pretty late, like it was in high school for the first time. But I remember this like pipe broke and it was just like kind of madness. And then they like evacuated and then they had the show again. So we kind of got two for the price of one. So we were really hyped up. But what was sick, man, was like, we always lived just outside the city. And I
Hmm.
think that was probably one of the early instances where you just felt the city energy on fire, where like you're in
Yeah.
a plaza, you're starting to feel New York. You
Hmm.
always like kind of have a starry-eyed view of the city of New York when you live just outside of it. And now I've lived here for a long time, but um, growing up, we were just outside and we'd take the train in.
Yeah.
We might have some drinks on the train that
Oh
in a
yeah.
bag,
You
so no
know,
one knows. And we'd
pregame.
come in, yeah, exactly. And we'd come in and we'd see a show and we'd have fun and there was always this like starry-eyed view of New York. And I think that
Hmm.
that show, I don't know if the music was like, like 100 years, you'll remember the music, but I will always
Right.
remember that experience of like being in New York, being at my first show, and having something kind of crazy go down that's unpredictable, which is just
Right.
so.
Yeah, and I think those are those memorable euphoric moments where I think we're missing right now when it comes to live music,
Oh, yeah.
like like the tailgating, kind of just like you said, the prepping with your friends. Those are the memories because you get psyched, like all right, we're gonna you know take the train, catch some drinks, and
Yeah.
like the anticipation leading into it. And then the same energy is like once you get to the line, you're just like everyone's on the same wavelength because everyone's hyped to like. And then when the artist comes, it's like everyone's in unison. It's like everyone is in like the same like energy wavelength. And it's something you can't really describe. It's like, yeah, you're just like, once the music starts playing, it's like euphoric. It's like you just go.
I mean, thereafter, man, I saw Chance at SOBs for like this like surprise show when I was
Yeah.
like a semester at NYU, and I just like popped in. It was me alone with a backpack on from school, and I just watched him, and he played acid rap, and it was surreal. And like I saw Frank at Panorama more recently, and I think that was when that moment happened for me with Blonde that like really kind of set a tone for me to feel
Hmm.
free. That's what I think these artists can do so well.
Right.
It's exciting to be on something like this to share my perspective because I've studied artists nonstop, like especially like Chance and Frank, where I'm holding on to every word they say in an interview, every word they say in a podcast like this. So it's those Easter eggs and
Right.
gems of people that build that we're starting to get to a point, myself and Indify, where we're realizing we got to leave those for others too.
Yeah, that's super important. And speaking of artists, you're an artist as well. And I love to hear like what are the early kind of aspirations of being an artist, where that started. Was it something that you just started writing, or was there an instrument you picked up that you were like, hey, I'm just gonna start writing songs? Was there like a moment that's inspired you? I want to learn a
Yeah,
little bit more about that.
it's funny. I think as I've gotten older, I've only believed in magic more. And so what I mean by that is like when I was like 10, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to be like an accountant or something because it's unrealistic to be a musician. And it's unrealistic to like be an entrepreneur. I mean, equally kind of, it's unrealistic to carve that path out. And I would say that when I was really young. And as I got older, I just started to do and do more and follow that whatever itch kind of led me to something and just trust it. And I think that was the thing that I probably did because I did have this, I think, almost leg up that when I looked around in Westchester, there weren't many people who looked like me. And so I knew I was different. And when I moved to 4 different countries before I was 8, I had to be put in a place where I was different each time. and learn, make new friends and adapt and be comfortable with being different. And so that, plus I think my parents always supporting me growing up, really like lucky and privileged and having the bases covered, as well as my parents like always pushing me to believe in myself, led me to like be 51% over in terms of the belief scale, to be like, if I have an instinct, I'm actually going to go for it. And so that's where, like, even down to like, you know, middle school, high school, I remember picking up a guitar and just like trying and not being afraid to try. And I think that's the step that I think a lot of people miss in a lot of different things. It's like just being willing to try, being willing to shoot your shot. And it's something we've been talking a lot about in Indify. It's, I think, the core of being an artist.
So big.
I picked it up. I just started playing, and I was very lucky to have a friend who's a mentor, Daniel Launer, in high school, who showed me the way in terms of how to use Logic Pro, how to record. You know, he would coach me writing, melodies, all these different things. And he actually produced Topaz Jones's album, Arcade. And so he's legitimate, and he brought me into the music world. And he's an incredible talent, an incredible mentor. He brought me into the music world very young, and I was lucky to have that mentorship and guidance, because otherwise I don't know if I would have even fully gone and done Indify, gone and done the things that I'm doing now. But that's how it all started. And I think what ended up happening is, you know, when you're willing to try and make that first jump, then you start pulling at the string, and you start pulling at the string, and it just got crazy from there. After really, like, it all started with starting to make music in high school, and started to be on these blogs and hanging out with my best friends and just bumping music in high school, and really just loving it. And that was really the first instance of, I think, when, for me as an artist, I was born, but also on a much bigger scale, and in terms of what's happening right now, Indify was born too.
Wow. I feel like, you know, artists, you know, whether it's like, I always tell artists, like, they always have this track record of these small wins, whether it's the first completion of that first song. Do you remember like that first song or show that you're like, wow, this is what it feels like to
Yeah.
be?
So I went to Colgate University, and before that I had a project with Daniel Launer that we did for our like senior project that did crazy well online. And I remember that being like, wow, this is crazy. But I was just writing and playing guitar and doing more of the musical instrumentation for that. The first day I get to college, I meet my random roommate named Aaron Mentos, who's a rapper, bass player. And we, in the first few hours of meeting each other, we wrote a song. Next thing we know, that song becomes like one of the biggest songs on campus, like straight up. Like, everybody in our grade knows the words, everybody knows it.
What?
And I think it was a bunch of shows that year. This is my freshman year of college.
Crazy.
We opened for artists like AER, who's fire.
Yes, yes.
Dollars we opened for at campus. Hoodie Allen back in the day we opened for.
Woody
And we
Allen.
play, and I think all these acts would be like, what's going on? Because you'd have like 700 people singing the words to our song. And so, like, and we were the openers. So it's just
I
because
love that.
I think every school has that local college like band. And so Shav and Mentos, and if you dig online, you'll probably find it. But that was like the first moment where I was actually also singing. So I think metaphorically and literally, that was when I started to find my voice.
Wow. So literally 4 hours into like you starting school, you meet your roommate. And I think this is where like the universe and like, you know, just everything comes together. It's kind of like optimizing those moments, and you just ran with it.
Yeah, I mean, so this is where like, and I think the journey from then on, and you let me know which part of it to jump into, became more and more cosmic. Up to
Yeah.
today, where I'm like, this is crazy. It
Right.
would be, I believe, and like I said, I believe more in magic and the cosmicness of what's happening today
Right.
than I did, and for us, and especially for Indify, than I did 10 years ago and 10 years before that, which is, you know, I think it's this Benjamin Button effect of, I've only continually believe more in magic because more and more keeps happening that is surreal. And I can go into like, from that moment, what started happening that
Yeah.
yeah. Like, so you keep pulling at that string, and for me, it's cool to talk about Shav Mentos because that was such a formative thing for me on an entrepreneurial level too. Like, I learned how to run a business. You know, I think artists are founders, and entrepreneurs
Right.
are artists. Like I truly believe that there is such a correlation. And so,
100%.
and you know, that conversation has become spotlighted as part of the international zeitgeist right now. It's like artists and entrepreneurs are not that different. They deserve similar tools. And so that's, I mean, what we're going to now. But after the band, I was just so obsessed with music that I was like, I want to intern in music. And so I interned at Warner Music Group. And I was part of the digital strategy and business development team. And I was 19, so they were practically babysitting me. And like, it's wild that you get internships at like a macro digital music
Yeah.
company at that level. And I started to see that in Sweden, Spotify penetration rates had gone to 50%. And I'm like, this is fascinating. Everybody here is just listening on this thing called Spotify. And I'm sure that this will take over the world. I wonder like what other regions this is probably going to go to. And I started to look at Indian smartphone user numbers. And I was like, oh, the potential for streaming in India, which I don't even think we're still at, is insane, right? I'm so interested in that market. I'm so interested in that for obvious reasons. What are the companies there? And I end up speaking to a co-founder of a company called Savin. And at that point, I joined Savin as an intern. And there, Savin is the biggest streaming service in India. And so what I started to learn there is, you know, making these tools was not that different than making music. I would like draw something, send it to engineers in India, that it would come back and it'd be like a fully built, beautiful dashboard. And I'm like, this is beautiful. This is creative. This is scratching the itch I have. And at the same time, I started to see, oh, there's a ton of information around the data inside of these services. So I start to ask myself, I'm like, like what do like A&Rs and scouts use? I assumed being like, you know, 21, like, oh, these people probably have insane tools. Like I'm thinking like they have like rocket ship, like space type features that they're using to discover artists. And I go in and, you know, music and tech are like oil and water. They just don't mix. I think that's the expression. But basically like no one had cracked this problem before. And the specific problem was around emerging artist data. So a lot of these A&Rs were using the same blogs that like me, Connor, and Matt would go on in high school. And that's how they were finding artists that they would sign for millions of dollars just because they didn't have better resources. And so, and I knew because I'd been on some of those blogs, to get on those blogs, you just need to know somebody.
Right.
And if you're emailing them, if you're emailing them out of like 10,000 emails, they're not going to see it. And so it kind of broke my heart to know that. And you know, to see them documenting and writing down this like YouTube and SoundCloud data, it was like, hey, like Matt and Connor, you're my best friends. Matt, you've been building websites for pizza shops as long as I've known you. Like you've done these internships in tech. And Connor, you worked in media at Time, Viacom. Like you know how to storytell, which is going to be an important component of any like music tech product.
Right.
Like, can we work together on something? And January 2015, we started. What ended up getting crazy is, and I'll bring you kind of to the first inflection point, which I think was almost the birth of Indify. We every week got on the phone while we were all in different colleges, and we did one thing a week, brick by brick. That whole year, the whole last semester, January to May, it just started adding up. And as part of Colgate University, I was part of an incubator program called Thought into Action, and somehow the school got Jessica Alba, MC Hammer, the president of BuzzFeed, the CEO of Warby Parker, and the CEO of Rent the Runway to fly into Colgate, which is in upstate New York, freezing cold.
Oh my gosh.
On a panel in front of our whole school for a mock Shark Tank where they picked 4 companies to pitch, ours being one of them. And I remember seeing like the you know, people backstage, MC Hammer backstage. I remember seeing the audience, everybody I know and their parents. It's Parents Weekend. And literally being like, I have to go to the bathroom and planning on going up. This is backstage, like sweating like 100%, like in real life. And they're like, no, dude, you have to get up there. Like we're miking you up right now. And I'm like, can I barely breathe? Go up there, fake it till I make it, do the pitch, get grilled, like almost like blacked out, don't even remember. And next thing I know, the panel votes coming in and the audience votes coming in, and it's like Indify. And we won $25,000 in grant money, no strings attached.
Oh my gosh.
Before Connor, myself, and Matt graduated from college. And that was, I mean, we were already deciding on doing that full time, but that gave us the platform to start. And that was crazy. And we're very lucky for those opportunities, but it was also an insane and electric moment
Mm-hmm.
to not only participate in that, but to win something like that and to have that confidence coming out of it.
Yeah, you talk about a lot of things, so I'm just gonna recap a little bit. I think one, just obviously your inspiration, aspirations, and passions of being an artist. So that's important to establish. Two, just for context, you were interning at this digital department at Warner, and then you also saw a problem. And I think for a lot of like artistpreneurs, like people that are looking for solutions, like they want to figure out ways to help, solve those things. And to your point, you're like, what are these A&R tools outside of blogs that are going to help people to discover one artist, two, make meaningful decisions to actually potentially sign them or partner with them at a label. And you were able to do that. You were able to intern for the essentially the DSP for
Yeah.
India,
Yeah, exactly.
and learn about their market share and how valuable their audience is, but also understand too from an independent standpoint, like how are you like putting these together. And the things that you were doing with Connor and your team meeting once a week led you to that inflection point where like you had that Shark Tank moment, but I think all those experiences leading into it was like boom.
Yeah. 100%. And that's what prepared us, man. And that's what I'd encourage anybody, who's trying to start something or trying to shoot their shot, as we say, like to do. It's just like start small and just start. I think that's that's one of the hardest. My dad always said to me, the hardest thing to do is start. And I always find that too. When you start having fun, and the anxiety comes really before that a lot of the times. And I think, I think this is a problem we felt as first, on a first principles basis. Like for myself, like it broke my heart to know how artists were being discovered, because as an artist myself, I was like, how can this be true? Even if the question was like, what if you are out there and you're actually selling tickets and you actually have people coming out and you have people listening and you have people like loving you? It's one thing to believe you should like blow up. It's another thing to actually be performing and resonating and never be seen because you don't have the cousin or the right person in the music industry. And I think that's always been what the core value and mission of Indify is to help artists achieve their potential no matter what. And where we started in what I call like Act 1 is different from where we're going right now in Act 2. But I'm I'm excited to kind of talk about both of those steps too.
Yeah. So as let's say you get this $25,000 grant, surreal moment. Let's talk about the kind of the parallels, because you're also an artist at the time. What is that experience like, as a founder, starting to create this company? What are some of those initial like kind of growing pains and like learning experiences? I like to say from this podcast, the lessons learned of starting, Indify for like Act 1, and also secondly, how are you also dedicating yourself to your craft as an artist?
Yeah. So I think the lessons, I think the consistency lesson in the beginning was so important. I think that's like something that's so real. We always say trust equals consistency over time. And we got that from somewhere else. I'm not sure exactly why, but like where, but that's became so important to us and so important to what we did. What ended up happening after that is we have this $25,000. We come out of college, and we we think that's like a ton of money, but the truth is, and we're grateful for it, but the truth is it like goes to legal fees, it goes to like getting, it goes to setting up the company. I mean, there's so much that come from expenses in the beginning stage of a startup. And what we were lucky to have is that in this incubator space for a little bit. So we just start embedding, like me, Matt, Connor, again, like we've been in college in different colleges. So we come together and we're in it every day. And so there was a part where we were in this incubator space in Hamilton where we lived together and just worked together for like 2 months, which was actually amazing. And then we moved to my basement in Westchester. And those first 2 years, you could just be 3 idiots in the basement, or you could be like, the next level. Like, you just have no idea. And you just every day wake up. And like for me, I was waking up upstairs. I just go downstairs. And that was my whole life. And my friends are in the city, like doing their thing. They're making like real salaries and like whatever. But like, that's where like, I think the first thing that gets tested is your will and your self-belief and your drive. And I think that was always the case with my music too. If you were making the parallel, it was, you know, this is a ridiculous concept to try to do both, but I believe. And so that never wavered. And I always believed we were going to get to a point where Indify was affecting millions of people. And for me, the music was going to be affecting millions of people at the same time. And so even from the basement days, we talked about those things happening. And I remember you keep hitting it, you keep trying, you keep growing a little bit. And I remember one inflection point was in October 2015, Matt builds the first like working real version of with scaled tracked artists. Like it had 40,000 artists tracked. And Connor is every day writing an article about artists that are doing well on the platform. And we're sending it to anybody who would be willing to listen in the music industry as like sort of like a beta proof point of this like editorial newsletter. We called Fresh Picks, and actually it's been every day for the last 5 years now. So,
wow.
In October 2015, once the platform starts humming, and Matt, again, like he crushed it. He built the whole thing himself. That was just like diligence and work that we put in. And Connor was like really like going deep into the platform, understanding it better than anybody else in the world. Connor was like, you got to check this artist out. Kai exclamation point, Kai. And so I listened. He's like number 54 on the rank. Connor had flagged it. And I'm like, this is really good. And there was nothing on it. There was no press. It was like organic SoundCloud data, organic followers on Twitter and Instagram. And but it was super small. It was like 60,000 followers, like, or 60,000 plays, like a few thousand followers. And but we all fell in love with it. It was like these acoustic, like little demos. And Connor, myself, and Matt, even our CTO, was just like, we just can't stop listening. So at that point, I was like, let's talk to him. Like, let's get on the phone. Connor starts emailing him. Connor starts talking to him. We had this conversation basically, and he's like, I'm 17. I'm in El Paso, Texas. Like, I'm making, you know, music on my cell phone. I'm like planning on being a music teacher. Like, people kind of like are teasing me a little bit in school, but like everybody locally is what's supporting it organically. And we're like, what blogs are you on? Like, who do you like know in the industry? And at that point, he really didn't have many connections at all. So we were like, we love you. We want to help in any way we can. But more than anything, we were just like, this is something special. Like, and it's something that, again, like our platform flagged out of 40,000 artists. He was in the top ranks. And it was this moment of like, hey, like this is somebody who you could at that point only really find through the platform. And so what happened from there is we helped him get on a Pigeons and Planes piece, which was huge for us because we put this on this piece. We put data in this piece. And it broke the door open for us where a lot of people saw that and we're like, oh, these artists are amazing. Well, next thing you know, Kai goes to Atlanta for a trip and he meets his team that like really start helping him. And he's like, you know what, I'm going to change my name to my real name, Khalid. And and we'd flagged him on this November 2015 piece. And a lot of the industry, we were like, hey, like we believe in this. We believe in this artist. And not many people at that time knew him. We, you know, in a very, I think, validating way, predicted the success of Khalid. And this is what I'll say is like, you know, Khalid built everything on his own. And it's watching that was just a learning experience for us. But to have been able to watch it, to have been able to really get like mentored by his team and those people, what ended up happening is we built a lot of trust and we learned a lot. And that from there, I remember we featured Billie Eilish at 13 years old. We featured Post Malone in 2015. When SoundCloud rap came out, Connor was like, this genre is like, something's happening here. And I was like, what's going on here? He wrote a piece and that really like, you know, started a spotlight on that. And then like pop artists who they don't love that term. Eventually what ended up happening is a lot of these labels, Atlantic, Interscope, I'd rather actually not say them by name. A lot of these labels, you know, basically just started signing up. Like whoever you could think of, a lot of these major labels like started signing up for the platform. And so what ended up happening is, we got to a point where like our rank and our editorial became really meaningful in the industry. And when people would jump up and highlight on there, they would kind of get a boost or get some like get valued and get seen. And I think that first step was accomplished of democratizing discovery. But we started to dig into something deeper and we were like, access to funding, access to education, access to great teams are really how you actually get to that point. And so we had democratized discovery a little bit and like helped the right artists be seen, but I think we're still far from our goal of helping artists achieve their potential just based on their potential and based on, you know, really like a more equalized, fair opportunity ecosystem. And so that kind of brings you into the next stage. But to your question earlier, I think a lot of what we learned there was resilience because it wasn't overnight. It took
Right.
Some of these clients, like it took a year to get, even if the contract was signed, to actually,
Mm-hmm.
or to get even if the verbal was agreed, the contract
Right.
was signed for a year
Oh
after
my
they
gosh.
do it.
Yeah.
So we stood there and kind of got kicked in the teeth for like a couple years, but I think we got out on the other end, and that's when we started to raise funding and start to hit a different inflection point.
No, I think those are really important things to note. As any founder, anyone that's starting or creating a startup, you just said it, the resilience, right? Waking up every day and going down to your basement and working, getting to it, and talking about those like different roles and between Connor running the editorial stuff, your CTO building the platform, and you kind of just like being the glue of everything. um, I think that's super important to recognize, and because you grew up as friends, but now you're business partners working together. So there's something special about that, aside
Yeah.
from just having coworkers. I think I wanted to also point that out as well. Um, and then as you're going through these to that moment where you discovered Khalid and started to like build these clients, uh, were there any like challenges where like, okay, we're getting a lot of feedback, we're getting a lot of just notoriety, this is a lot's happening in these moments? Because I know for a lot of startups it's like, hurry up and wait. So it's like when that happens, it's like you got to like really wrangle yourself and like really just kind of adapt to the speed of things that are happening. It's like you're an artist yourself. You're like, oh wait, people are noticing us now. We have to like actually really put ourselves out there.
Yeah. I think, well, on the comment on like, again, like our best friends and us working together from really since like I think we've been friends. I think the concept has been there and the like energy has been there. That's a superpower in many ways. I at first was scared about it, like going to work with your best friends. What's that going to be like? But we have unbreakable trust. Like I've known Connor since he's been in fourth grade, since we've been in fourth grade, and he's known
Right.
Matt since pre-K. Like they've known each other that long.
Crazy.
So it's like this is lifelong. This is bigger than business,
Mm-hmm.
family. So I think with that comes this ability to weather the storm. And I think there was this dark period for me and for the company where even though we were getting these people signing up and kind of signing up for what we call like the first version of the platform, I think we were hitting a wall where like we were capped out on the like change we could affect a little bit. Like
Mm-hmm.
started to see, and that's I think the nature of entrepreneurs when even they start to get a spotlight to your question, you want to keep getting bigger and you want to keep building it higher and you want to see how much really how much change and innovation you can create within the space that you're in. For us,
Right.
like, I think we were shining a light on these artists, but what we would do on the side is we'd like be like, hey, artist A meet manager X, like artist
Mm-hmm.
B meet like lawyer Y, like artist C meet like agent Z, right? Like we would try to facilitate these partnerships because we knew that they were so important to building a career, and it became so natural. And I think this was like part of our breakthrough towards realizing Act Two.
Mm-hmm.
We were in a darker place. We were running out of money. For me, I was going through some health stuff that like really had my head spinning and my world spinning, on a personal level. And then on the team, like again, you have those periods where it could be like 8 months or so where you're just hitting it and like stuff isn't moving as much.
Right.
And we were going to fundraise, and at that time, people were like, music is like toxic to the VC community because it was
Mm-hmm.
coming out of such a tumultuous period, which I actually think makes it the best time to buy into music. It was at its lowest. And
Exactly.
so as an investor, I think we were lucky that like after so many no's, we finally got a yes. And it was upon, and I think this is where like the tech community can be powerful. It was upon digging deeper into like how can
Mm-hmm.
we really affect more meaningful change in the industry and
Right.
realizing what we're doing on the side of like connecting these artists to managers are not in this, in the way of Khalid, again, like we predicted it. We saw it happening. We
Mm-hmm.
were able to say like, hey, there's something special here. What happened later is it was this artist, Pink Sweats, and his manager, Josh Feshback.
Yes. Pink
The
sweats.
platform identified Josh actually because he was managing a bunch of artists on the platform. And Josh and I became friends, and Connor became friends. And he was like, hey, there's this artist, Pink, that And actually at the time, his name was just DJ. He was like jamming on the couch. Me and him would jam, we'd hang out. And it was like, he was like, he's, really special. And once he started sending us the records, we're like, this is amazing. And at this point, we discovered it through Indify, but it was discovering the team through Indify, which is another really good asset of Indify. You find the teams behind these artists.
Right.
You realize that that's such a big part of an artist's story. And I think these artists' teams are as much founders as these artists in a lot of cases. And so what we ended up realizing is, hey, we can enable a lot of great teams and partnerships. And at that time, they were like, we need help with capital. We need help with like playlist pitching. And we need human resources. And so we were like, hey, you both should meet. And they ended up doing a partnership. Human resources at that point was like, hey, like, you help make this happen. We want to help, like, have you involved in this and create a relationship where you guys can, basically like send over and share artists that are looking for this help, and we'll actually involve you. And at that point, it wasn't our business, but I remember us, Connor, being like, we can always give it back. And so we ended up like basically accepting a portion of the net profits only on the human resources side. And so it didn't affect the artist cut. And next thing we know, the first record goes platinum. And we were able to play a huge part in like helping tell Pink's story. And it's a different relationship because we were involved and we helped enable him to be successful versus just predicting that he would. And I think that's when we started to get the itch and started to break through that dark period where we're like, we can evolve Indify. And it was always something we thought about, into not just a discovery tool, but a marketplace where artists and teams can discover, connect, and partner with each other, and really enable artists to go from point A to point Z along the roadmap of their careers, and sort of insert that right manager, insert that right lawyer, insert that right funding partner at the right times in their career and with clear and transparent terms. And so in the last year or so, we've built that tool. And what's insane is, it was through Twitter actually that Alexis said, I wish I could invest in the next Lizzo, or I wish I could invest in Lizzo Enterprises. And Alexis Ohanian is a founder of Reddit. He's, a venture capitalist, and he's an incredibly, like, I think really like thoughtful, like talented leader in that community.
Right.
And I just tweeted back. I was like, invest in the next one via Indify. Next thing I know, through friends, I'm basically like in the room with him. And we end up speaking, and he really believed in this so much so that he did invest in an artist through Indify named Kirby. And the point that we made to him was, the next frontier in music is the 99%. 5 years ago, if you asked me and our team, what would we believe is going to happen? There's data and discovery. You fast forward to today, and the music industry, that's the conversation every day in every room.
Yeah.
I think people are afraid to bet on the future. But, we're proud to stand here and say what the future will be in music is the 99%. And we're looking to enable that, enable artists to not just have livings, but have sustainable livings. Break down the superstar bust model, create what is like tools like Y Combinator and AngelList created for tech to more fairly democratize and equalize the opportunities in music, make these contracts way leaner and more transparent. And I think what's cool is music in the streaming world, I think it can make real revenue for an artist if they keep control of their rights.
Yes.
And at the same time, like, there can be really positive relationships with newer categories of partners, like people like artists, like major artists, like major athletes who might have influence to shine on those artists. So for us, we're building that marketplace that's going to connect these artists to their manager, to their lawyer, and to investment so that they can grow their career.
I love that. I mean, the fact that you talked about, and I'm just going to just like recap a lot because, you talked about a lot of very important points. From your inflection point with Khalid, learning about like how to like really leverage the data discovery side, but also understanding like what is next after that. And with your relationship with Pink Sweats, kind of taking that iteration of Indify to another level where, to your point, really connecting, okay, so your artist is discovered, but the artist may not have a team or resources to really help grow, sustain, to your point, and really build for the long term and longevity. And I love the fact that you said marketplace, because that's really where, artists need support. And, you can have a hit record that fans might discover, but it's like, what's next? What are you going to do to sustain that? And to your point, to be able to really match artists with partners is super key, and it's really the next level to like where music is going. And I really believe in the fact that the democratizing just where artists are now really more empowered to like really, you know, have power to really dictate where their music is going, because I think there's a distinction between like independent artists and major labels, and it's really understanding what the artist's goals are, because you could be an artist that's independent and regionally just successful, but it's also understanding like the music business as a whole is where like, okay, if I want to go to a situation with the label, I'm ready to actually do that and actually amplify myself. So I want to kind of point those distinctions out a little bit,
Yeah.
because I feel like it's important to recognize that we're not saying it's like one or the other. It's more so it's what are your goals as an artist, and also do you have the team to really support those needs, you know, because it's an everyday thing, like
Yeah.
24/7, always on.
Yep. And it's brick by brick. And I think you're so right about those questions. I think as an artist, you should, and as a team member as well, who's part of that artist journey, you should ask yourselves, what is success to us? Can we live without being, you know, Drake or Rihanna?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the end goal, or do we want to grow and put out the music we want to put out? Because the thing is, and I think any major label A&R would tell you this too, if you don't have plans on being a superstar, or you want to grow at your own pace, it might not be right to sign to a major label, because the pressures, you know, even if you're a successful artist, it doesn't mean that the label is excited about you. The label is winning off of the superstar artist, and they'll tell you that too. So
Right.
this alternative pathway, you know, this parallel and alternative pathway where there are options for more timely and slower and natural and organic growth, I think is really, for artists that believe in that model,
Mm-hmm.
I think is really important. And by the way, like major labels have had, I think there's a lot that needs to change in terms of like, you know, the fact that there's like a massive distribution fee up front, a lot of kind of like accounting work that happens with that. But
Right.
you are a superstar and you have a whole world of like thousands of employees working for you, and it's working, and you're actually one of the biggest artists in the world. There's an argument that certain artists are right to partner with labels. I just think it's not for the 99%, and that's who we're here to support and enable.
Right.
And I think that word marketplace is so important.
Right.
That you said was also important. So I agree. I re-agree with you. And the reason I say that is I think it's time for a new marketplace in music. We've had, you know, years ago we had Spotify, Daniel Ek go to those offices in Sweden and say, hey, like, I know Napster just killed the music business, but can you give me a chance to like rebuild it with this model? And I don't envy his positioning there, but he got it done. And that deserves a lot of respect, because what that ended up creating was a place where, you know, Steve Jobs talks famously about putting 100 songs in your pocket. We now have 50 million songs in our pocket, and we have access as artists to a huge listener base, which is a massive thing. I mean, I experienced it myself. I have 200,000 monthly listeners. It's crazy, right? And it's because of a platform like that, right? So Spotify became this marketplace that connected artists to listeners. The other frontier that became really important, that there's actually a lot of companies around this kind of marketplace today: United Masters, STEM, DistroKid, TuneCore, is the distribution marketplace. And what that said is, you could be an artist from anywhere in the world. You could be a kid in India. You can make music in your bedroom, and then you can get it on these streaming services. And you can actually get paid out for it. And I experienced that as well. I'm making a nice little extra income every month because my music actually generates streams. That connected and enabled artists to connect with streaming services. Well, I feel like every new company that comes out is like a new distribution service or a new but it's time for a new marketplace of music. What Indify is a completely new entity that we've never seen before. It's what we call a music services marketplace. And what it does is it enables artists to connect with really important partners to build their career and to build out their team. And so, you know, Indify is a marketplace that connects artists to teams, the same way Spotify is a marketplace that connects artists to listeners, the same way that distributors are a marketplace that connects artists to streaming services.
Right. And I think you make a great point, because I think from the distribution side, you know, when I look at like timeline, I think that was necessary to be established first, because you need to be able to just get your music out, versus, you know, before it was very different. Like you had to go through a label, or some type of independent platform. But, I think that was one thing. We understand now that music is accessible. You can upload your music on a platform and get it up in a week or two. But then it's like the next iteration. All right, what's next? My music's out there. Now you're creating that marketplace. We're going to connect you with the right teams and people.
Exactly.
Phase two, this is it.
This is it.
And in the fact that you have the audience now that has their music on these distribution platforms, now you're saying like, hey, we're going to provide these resources and services that match what you're looking for. And that's really the next level, as to like, because it's easy to get your music up now. We've established that. But now it's really like the long-term play, the long-term goals, and trying to find that right team to help support you to do so.
That's exactly it. And I think, making great music, it kills me when an artist makes great music and they never get the right team. It kills us when we see an artist have so much potential, but the other end of it didn't go right, so that they didn't end up in the right place, or a place where their music is inspiring as many people as it can. I think that's what we're here to enable. And I think quite literally, it's time for a new marketplace in music. Can I ask you a question?
Sure. Yeah.
2 weeks ago, Kanye started tweeting about the music industry in a very, very massive fashion. And he started saying a lot of things that, we've fundamentally believed for a bit, but it was interesting to me, right? Like he started talking about Y Combinator, which standardized terms in tech, and the need for something like that in music.
Yes.
I'm curious as to your thoughts on like how that all went, like the whole like back and forth that he's had with like the music industry in the last 2 weeks. I'm curious to get your perspective on it, your thoughts, and your kind of mind on like what's going on and what he's really talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Ye, obviously, I've had experience working with his team at Def Jam, just for context. But just from just overall, if I were to like remove myself from just my role at the label and just more so just like a music person that's really like objectively looking at it, we're understanding that the terms that he's talking about are not necessarily the same that they should be, given what you mentioned before, like the distribution fees, like a lot of stuff that, that are being, integrated with a lot of these artist deals and contracts are pretty, archaic in a sense, because they're not necessarily adapting to the times. But at the end of the day too, like, I think there's that label aspect where, this is what's worked. So we're going to continue to do this. And we provide this, this is our value proposition. So to your point, I think it's really kind of leveling that off when you talk about the 99%, where to be able to create the terms that are best suited for the artist. You said leaner contracts. And I think that's the direction where music is going to go, because I feel like in terms of like the market share and revenue, everyone's going to make money. And I think that's what we have to realize. Like streaming is not going anywhere anytime soon, and I think this is like something that I think back in the day when we looked at like Napster, we looked at it as more so, I think not say me, but like the industry looked at it as something that was negative towards the industry, versus embracing what they did with Spotify and a lot of these DSPs now. So we have to look at it as that, where like there's a big piece of there's big pie where we can all share, and whether it's the independent artist at 99% or is that 1% from the label side, everyone's going to make money and we're all going to eat and we're going to be successful. And at the end of the day, the goal is to put the best music out and make sure, the fans continue to like be intrigued, to continue to get motivated to listen to music every day. Because if once that stops, no one's in business.
Yeah,
So,
100%.
so that's the way I'm looking at it, is like being able to compromise and being like, hey, we all have an opportunity to eat. Let's eat together.
Yeah. I think that's really well said. And I think for us, like the way that happens is an artist with the right, team around them is something that's really powerful, because it's the same way that, our team has worked. I can handle the conversations when we go to meet with different people that want to potentially work with us. Connor is lights out and just lasered in on when it comes to like actually using data to find the right artists and putting context around those artists and understanding their stories and telling those stories. And Matt is like, a legend when it comes to actually building a platform that really first disrupted like discovery and data and music. And I think our team together, on top of like we've since like hired a ton of amazing people and people that work with us. Um, Big shout out to Tim Lukau. I always mispronounce his name still.
Shout out to Tim.
He was a co-founder of STEM that helped build that, and actually, is good friends with some of the people that have worked on really disruptive projects in the past. Donag, who works with us on the business side, and a ton of people on our team that really care about being artists first. I think we've been able to build a team, and we've been lucky to work with people like Alexis to build a team to get to the next level where
super key.
Yeah, and Jordan Weller too on the artist relations side, and that squad, that like group is together what makes us strong. And we're one organism, we're one team together. I think on the related side, as an artist, you need that teamwork where people are filling in gaps that you don't have filled, or places that you're not as good at. We always say, and I think I'm just about there. You always want to be the dumbest person in the room, and I think with our team that we started working with at Indify, I think I've officially become the dumbest person in the room. And every time I talk to the team, because they know so much more than me, and they're really doing the work building this for me. I get to be a megaphone to point back to what we're building.
I love that you said that, because just for context for the conversation, so like the Digilogue, right, started at 2016. I mean, Brandon, who's like our producer and head of content, like I met him 3.5 years ago. He's on this podcast right now. You can't see him, but I grew up, we grew up together like these past 3 years, really developing this group. And I think for me, it's finding the right folks. We're a bigger team, and we're hitting an inflection point now as well. So the fact that we can put out content, we can do these things and interview folks like you, like we didn't have an opportunity to do that before because we were focusing on different things, more so just events. And I think as a company, whether it's you go through these different iterations, it's like you have to scale with that group of people together. Yeah. And hopefully you can stay together to be able to get to that next, whether it's act 3, but now this is act 2.
I love that. Yeah. That's exactly
the goal. So fast forward a little bit, you have some exciting things coming up. Talk about act 2. Obviously we talked about it in this conversation, like what's up next for Indify from the platform level, and then also what's up next for you as an artist.
Yeah, so with Indify, it's so exciting because we really are, like, I think very emblematic of like artists in a way, of like that embody the slow build, that embody the brick by brick builds, because we haven't ever ran a press piece for 5 years, which is kind of, if you're a tech company and you've raised like real like VC money, is like kind of a wild thing to think about. But what's cool is that I think we've built something that the world needs right now, and we're going full force with it to tell people about it. And it's this marketplace that connects artists to their teams, and it allows people to fairly discover, connect, and partner. And what are the, I think, most innovative pieces of technology that we've built, and I think is a staple part of what Indify will be known for, is before the Kanye conversation, a year ago, we raised from people that were partners or involved in creating YC, Y Combinator. This is kind of what we've been having for a few years, and work we've been doing for a few years.
Right.
And conveniently, when we were going to run our first kind of announcement, the whole world started to care about this issue in a different way. And what I'm really proud of is we've built something that helps artists and partners safely transact. And it doesn't have contracts. It doesn't have like massive contracts behind it. It doesn't even have real contracts. It's just a platform where you agree on 4 terms: the amount of capital, the term of the license, how long it is, the amount of content, and the percentages. And that's all really you need to be nailing when it comes down to like a conversation of like a fair agreement. And it's completely transparent, and it's backed by incredibly artist-friendly terms of service that's built in our platform. But it's the idea that, very similar to what AngelList is doing in tech, that you can show up on a platform and you can agree on these things. And you can make it happen actually on platform, and you trust the brand of the platform, you trust the platform deeply enough that you know that that partnership is going to be fair, and that everybody's going to get paid out on time, and that this agreement is going to be strong. So I think announcing that, getting the word out about that, the fact that, hey, everybody's talking about the problem, we're going to try to present a solution, and it'll get ripped apart, and we'll work on it with everybody together. And I think that's what
Love that.
Tech is. You open source feedback, you open source information, and you share it with the community, and you build it with the community. So I think getting that off our chests and into the world is going to be a really important step for us. And musically, I just put out a project, Too Pretty for Sunshine, it's called. And I put out a song, very funny enough, yesterday was my birthday, and I put out a song called Best Friends. And it
Happy
was,
birthday.
thank you, man.
Okay.
I put out a song called Best Friends, and I think, this whole conversation probably explains what that's about, which is, the main line is I'm hanging with my best friends, which is pretty much every day what I get to do and what I'm lucky to do, build with people that I've been friends with for my whole life.
I love that. I mean, the fact that, to a point, Act Two, creating this platform, this marketplace, it's coming from an artist, artist-driven platform, artist first. And I think that's the most important thing. And, the fact that you're able to keep it on platform and make it super, not say easy, but just fair in a sense where, the agreements don't have to be these complex, contracts, and to make sure that there's trust built on that platform. And I think that's going to keep, people there because they want to be able to exercise these things in real time. It's not like, hey, let's get this agreement and 6 months from now we're not doing anything. It's like, let's keep things going to be able to match the momentum of the artist as well. I think that's super important.
That's exactly the why. When I see agreements that are stuck in legal for 8 months and it's for a 5-song EP, and now the EP could have come out and another EP could have come out and another EP could have come out.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to watch. So we're just trying to make it super easy, super quick, super simple.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's very on demand and just, makes it super accessible. And congratulations on, obviously the new song. And, obviously, happy belated birthday. So as we wrap up this conversation, I like to go back to the things, and I'm going to go into what's your biggest lesson learned. But I love the fact that, I'm just going to recap for the audience. You traveled early on as a child, all these different places, but always finding a way to assimilate yourself and really stand out. I think for you, you're able to really use that as a superpower in a sense where, all right, I'm an artist, I'm different, and I'm gonna own it. And you're talking about that little magic, that you mentioned about, hey, do I want to become an accountant, or actually do I want to be an artist or a musician? And as you're kind of going through these experiences, whether it's that first show at Irving Plaza or experiencing acid rap, you're kind of adding to that magic pool where just all right, this feels real. This feels really good. And then those first moments when you're going to college at Colgate, you meet Mentos, who's your roommate, and you come up with your first song, there's first for 4 or 5 hours, put out that, and you're like a, household name. I mean, people know you. You're opening up for big stars like Hoodie Allen, all these people that are visiting the colleges, and you become that artist. But at the same time, too, you go through this internship, with Warner, with the Indian DSP, understanding that there's a need in terms of artist discovery tools, understanding that there's an audience in India, and then you worked to help create that at Colgate with your best friends. Start that, get the grant, fast forward, hit that inflection point with Khalid, which is amazing. I mean, everyone knows Khalid. And then hit another inflection point with, Pink Sweat, understanding that, hey, we can actually involve ourselves even more. And now Act Two, this is where the marketplace that you're creating, and it's super exciting that, that you're able to really take Indify to this next level. So with that all said, what is the biggest lesson learned for you through these experiences for our audience?
That was surreal. That's crazy because I don't think I've ever really shared the story in that much detail, especially on a personal side. So I appreciate you digging in and pulling there. But to hear you like say that, to literally understand everything that happened, I think to a T, that's probably the best I've ever even heard it. I greatly appreciate you having me on and supporting and
Sure.
listening and helping us share our story. So thank you for that first. The biggest lesson is that I've learned. It's my phone background currently, which is it's about the mission. I've always, in my 5 years of learning, with Indify and being an artist, what it comes down to for us is, can we help enable millions of artists to have sustainable careers? And for myself, can I and with that comes to be able to actually like do something they believe in every day. Um, on my music side, it's a lot about my own self-belief. And I think what the reaction is when I listen to it is, and when people listen to it, can I affect millions of people on the music side to make them believe in themselves? And that, that belief and hope is my mission. And I find that when I come back to that, because it gets cloudy,
Right.
you have obstacles, you have obstructions, you have things in your way, you have things that want to pull you away from the mission. In fact, we've turned down opportunities that I think people would be just bewildered by to stay on track with the mission. But I've never regretted a day in my life that I've stayed more on that course. And so for myself, for our team, I think what we've talked about is maintaining our values, being artists first, maintaining our mission to help every artist achieve their potential, no matter where they're from or their background, and for the music to like believe that you can. I think every time that I've come back to the mission on my journey, I've only felt closer to the truth. And so that's I think 5 years later, you get more to that itch or to that magic or to that reasoning that you even started. And if you can maintain that, and that is I think my biggest challenge, is making sure that we stay aligned with that always. Um, I think that's the biggest lesson and the biggest thing you could do for the things that you're working on.
I think that's huge, super, super, super important. Having that mission, those core values, because as you continue to grow, as you continue to iterate, you're gonna be pulled in so many directions. People are gonna challenge your ideals, they're gonna challenge your beliefs, but you're like, well, this is what we stuck with. This is what's helped us grow and get us to this point, and we're gonna continue to maintain that and be able to stick to that. So that's super amazing. But Shav, man, appreciate you being part of this your first podcast, episode 19, the L's,
Thank you so
aka
much.
lessons learned.
Thank you.
Yeah,
There's
this
no,
was
no better way to kick it off. So thank you.
no, we're really privileged, to have you on the L's Digilogue. Digilogue community is going to really appreciate, you sharing your story and what's up next for Indify. We're going to make sure we put your socials and Indify socials on the description. I'm just going to just do a little send off to the community. Make sure to check out Shav and Indify. Also, we're going to make sure we have access to your music and artist profiles, so like we can support you as well. And then for our Digilogue community, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being part of this journey. Obviously, it's very challenging during this pandemic, but we're here to support everyone through his music careers. And we have another great partner and friend with Indify that's also paying it forward and taking, your music to the next level. That 99%, that's you guys, part of our community. So can't wait. Stay tuned to the next episode. Talk soon. Peace.